Right now, somewhere in your house, or tucked away in a box in a garage or a basement, one of these might be sitting completely untouched. And I don't mean something you would look at and think, oh, that must be worth something. I mean the kind of thing a lot of people have already donated, already sold for $5 at a yard sale, or already handed over to a grandkid to play with on the floor. Toy trains, specifically the old ones. The ones your father set up under the Christmas tree every December, or the ones your grandfather kept in a wooden box on a high shelf and never let anyone touch. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what to look for, and you might be doing a very quick trip to the attic before I'm even finished. Number 10 on this list is the Marx Commodore Vanderbilt. Louis Marx and Company made toy trains from the 1920s all the way through the early 70s, and most of what they made was designed to be affordable and accessible. Department store stuff meant for kids, not for collectors. That's exactly why people throw it away without thinking twice. The Commodore Vanderbilt is a streamlined locomotive that Marx produced in the 1930s and 40s, modeled on the real New York Central steam locomotive of the same name. What you're looking for specifically is the version stamped with New York Central along the body in raised lettering, with a smooth silver or gray lithographed finish and no cracks in the pressed tin. The mechanism inside should still turn freely when you spin the rear wheels by hand. A well-preserved example in its original box can fetch anywhere from $60 to $120, depending on the condition of the lithography, the paint job essentially. And so, without the box it drops, but it's still worth pulling out and cleaning up carefully if you have one. These were often passed down as a complete Christmas set, so if there's a loop of O-gauge track in that same box, hold on to all of it together. Selling as a complete set always brings more. If you thought that one was surprising, wait for this. Number 9 is the American Flyer Hiawatha passenger set. Gilbert's American Flyer was Lionel's main competitor for decades, and the Hiawatha set from the late 1930s is one of the most beautiful things they ever made. The real Milwaukee Road Hiawatha train was a design sensation when it launched, all orange and gray and streamlined to look like it was moving even when it was standing still, and Gilbert captured that look remarkably well in S-gauge. Now, here's where you need to pay attention. American Flyer made both a pre-war version and a post-war version of this set. The pre-war version, made before 1942, has a slightly wider body profile and uses a different motor type, a clockwork or early electric mechanism, depending on the exact year. The post-war version is more common. To tell them apart, flip the locomotive over and look for a date stamp or a patent number. Pre-war examples can reach $250 to $350 for a clean set with matching passenger cars. If you find a set where all 3 or 4 passenger cars still have their original paper interior inserts visible through the windows, that's a meaningful bump in value. These were Christmas gifts in upper-middle-class households in the late 30s, and a lot of them survived in nice condition because they were treated carefully. Ever wonder why 2 old toy trains can look almost identical, but one is worth 10 times more than the other? Number 8 is a perfect example of that. This is the Ives Manufacturing Company locomotive. Specifically, any Ives piece made before 1930. Ives was actually one of the oldest toy train makers in America, founded back in 1868 in Bridgeport, Connecticut. They went bankrupt in 1930 and were absorbed by Lionel and American Flyer, which means anything with the Ives name cast into the metal or printed on the chassis is from before that date, full stop. The Ives name is your authentication right there. Look on the bottom of the locomotive or the side of the tender, the coal car behind the engine, for a cast or embossed marking that says Ives or Ives Manufacturing Company, Bridgeport, Con. If you find that marking, you're looking at a piece that is at minimum 80 to 100 years old. A well-preserved Ives electric outline locomotive in original paint can reach $300 or more with a patient buyer. Because production ended abruptly and the company vanished, there was no post-war revival, no reissue, no anniversary edition. What exists is what survived. If your grandfather had a train set he refused to let anyone touch, and it has that name on it, don't move it until you know what you have. Number 7 is the Lionel Standard Gauge State Set. Now, most people who know Lionel at all know the O-gauge post-war stuff, the classic red and green boxes, the locomotives with smoke units, the stuff that was everywhere in the 50s and 60s. That is not this. Standard gauge is larger, It was produced from around 1906 to 1940, and the State set is the pinnacle of what Lionel made in that era. The State set passenger cars are named after U.S. states, the Illinois, the Colorado, the California, and they have a distinctive two-tone paint scheme, usually in different combinations of brown, olive, or blue with gold or brass trim. What you're looking for here is a car with its original nickel handrails still intact. Those tiny metal railings along the sides of the car are the first thing that get bent, broken, or lost. A full passenger car with all handrails intact and original paint can individually be worth $100 to $150. A complete match set of 4 or 5 cars with a locomotive approaches $1,000 or more. These were expensive, even when they were new. Lionel marketed them to wealthy families, and plenty of those sets stayed in fine houses and survived in remarkable condition. If you have a larger-than-expected toy train that seems almost too big for standard track, pull it out carefully and look at those handrails. Number 6 is the Marklin Gauge 1 or Gauge 0 locomotive, and I want to stop for a second and be honest with you. I'm not going to inflate this one to make it sound more exciting than it already is. Marklin is a German manufacturer, still operating today, founded in 1859. Their early 20th century pieces, anything made before 1940, particularly Gauge 1, which is the large size, or the early Gauge 0, were precision engineered, expensively made, and survived in significant numbers because their owners treated them like the serious objects they were. What you need to check first is the scale. Gauge 1 track is about 1 3/4 inches between the rails. If you have a Marklin locomotive that runs on track that wide, and the bottom of the locomotive has a cast or stamped Marklin logo, look for the hexagonal or circular trademark. You are looking at something a serious collector will want. Values vary enormously based on model and condition, but a clean pre-war Marklin Gauge 1 locomotive routinely reaches $400 to $700 at auction. The reason I'm being careful here is that Marklin has been reproduced and re-released extensively, so the presence of the name alone isn't enough. You need the name, plus the specific gauge, plus signs of genuine age, paintwear consistent with actual use, not artificial distressing, and cast metal parts rather than later plastic components. Now, if you've been watching this far, do me a favor and give this a like. It helps more people find this information, and there are a lot of people out there who need to hear this before they sell something they shouldn't. Number 5 is the Buddy L pressed steel train, set from the early 1920s. This is different from everything else on this list in an important way. Buddy L toys weren't really toy trains in the traditional sense. They were massive, heavy pressed steel toys made by the Moline Press Steel Company in Illinois. The Buddy L name came from the founder's son. The early sets, made between 1921 and about 1930, are almost brutally heavy for what they are. A single Buddy L locomotive from this era can weigh several pounds. That weight is your first test. Pick it up. If it feels like a real hunk of metal, not hollow or light, that's a genuine early pressed steel piece. These were made from leftover industrial steel stock, the same material used in actual farm equipment because the founder had access to it cheaply. The surfaces will show real oxidation and paint wear consistent with age. A well-preserved early Buddy L steam locomotive with tender and original paint, even with honest playwear, runs $300 to $500 with the right buyer. These were often kept in garages and sheds, which ironically helped some of them survive because they were too tough to destroy easily. Number 4 is any pre-war Hornby O-gauge locomotive made in England between approximately 1920 and 1940. Frank Hornby founded Meccano Limited, and Hornby trains were the British answer to Lionel and Marklin. Here's the thing Americans often don't realize. A lot of Hornby pieces came to the United States through English immigrant families, and they've been sitting in American attics for decades, completely unrecognized, because they don't look quite like the Lionel pieces most American collectors know. Look on the bottom of the locomotive for a cast plate or stamp marking that says Hornby or Made in England. Both should be present on genuine pre-war pieces. The clockwork mechanism is another identifier. Many pre-war Hornby locomotives were wound with a key, not run on electric current. If your old locomotive has a winding key attached to the body or stored with it, and the mechanism still ticks when you wind it carefully, that's a significant positive sign. A pre-war Hornby Princess Elizabeth locomotive, one of their most famous models, in good original condition, reaches $400 to $600. Even smaller pre-war Hornby pieces with original key and box consistently bring $150 to $250 among collectors who know what they're looking at. Number 3 is the Lionel pre-war O-gauge 2 to 156 locomotive with the peacock blue finish. This is where the Lionel story gets genuinely interesting, because most people who know Lionel at all think of the post-war era, the 1950s stuff their parents or grandparents had. But Lionel's pre-war work is a completely different animal, and the 2 to 156 is one of the most striking things they ever produced. It was made from about 1924 to 1930, and the peacock blue version, Lionel called it peacock, and that's the word collectors use, is a specific paint color, a vivid teal-green blue that is unmistakable once you've seen it. It was also made in Mojave, a tangent brown color, and in other finishes, but the peacock is the one that commands the highest prices. Here's your verification. Look at the number plate on the cab of the locomotive. It should be a brass plate with 256 stamped or cast into it. Then look at the color of the body under any scratches or wear. The paint should be consistent all the way to the metal, not a thin surface coat over a different colored base. A clean 2 to 156 in peacock blue, running with original paint, is worth $500 to $800 to a serious pre-war Lionel collector. These were upper-tier department store gifts in the mid-20s, and a good number of them survived in family collections. Number 2 is the Lionel, number 381 locomotive from 1928 to 1931, the standard gauge electric outline engine. This is the piece that serious pre-war Lionel collectors argue about at shows. The 381 is a large standard gauge locomotive, not O-gauge, modeled on an electric box cab style, and it came in multiple colors, including apple green, which is the version that stops people cold when they see it in good condition. Here is your 2-part authentication check. First, confirm you have standard gauge by measuring the track width. It should be 2 1/8 inches between the rails. Second, look at the headlights on both ends of the locomotive. Original 381 units have brass headlight bezels, the ring around the headlight lens, not painted tin ones. Replacement bezels exist, but they're a different profile. Both confirmations together, the correct track gauge and the brass bezels, tell you what you have. A 381 in original apple green paint with intact brass bezels and working mechanism reaches $800 to $1,200 in today's collector market. These were the most expensive Lionel product of their era, when new and serious collectors have been chasing the clean examples for 40 years. And now none would admit, not because the locomotive itself is dramatically different from what I've already described, but because of what almost nobody knows, the box. The original Lionel pre-war orange and blue box, in intact condition with all 4 corner reinforcements undamaged and the original tissue paper insert still inside, can double or even triple the value of whatever is in it. A locomotive worth $400 loose becomes an $800 to $900 item in its original box in this condition. The reason is simple. Paper survives worse than metal. Most boxes got thrown away, got wet, got torn apart. A complete, original, intact Lionel pre-war box is genuinely rarer than the locomotive it held. Here is exactly what to check tonight. Open whatever box you think might be original and look at the inside bottom flap for a date code or a model number printed in black ink. Then check the 4 corners. Genuine original boxes have a specific fold pattern on the corners that is difficult to replicate cleanly. If the box, the locomotive, and the tissue are all together, before you do anything else, have a professional look at it. At this level, with the box intact, it is absolutely worth having someone knowledgeable see it in person before you decide what to do with it. So there you have it, 10 old toy trains with values most people completely miss. And the one I keep thinking about is that number 1, because of how many people over the decades have kept the train and thrown away the box without realizing the box was the rarer piece. If you have an old train set, whether it was your father's, your grandfather's, or one you picked up at an estate sale 20 years ago, go look at it tonight with fresh eyes. Hit subscribe if you want more of these. There are categories of old things that people overlook every single week, and I cover them as often as I can. And I have a question for you. Do you have an old toy train set? Tell me in the comments, whose was it, and do you still have it? Take a closer look at what you already own. you might be sitting on more than you think.